This webinar was created to help FieldView users set up applications using FieldView. We've added a table of contents so you can fast forward to review any specific content that was presented on the webinar. This original webinar aired on April 8, 2020.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. We are so fortunate to get to share in your evening plans. We have another webinar in our series for spring readiness. This is a webinar specific to managing our applications with Climate FieldView, and we have just a fantastic speaker for you tonight. I think you're really going to enjoy him. And we just want to thank you again for, despite the current challenges, current uncertainty, right, that you are still taking the time to learn more about how we can better serve you, how climate can better help with your planting needs for this season. And again, knowing that even with all the uncertainty going on, that our farmers, our dealers, our growers are still pressing forward. We just want to thank you for continuing to do what you do every day, right? And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and let you know, as our webinar participants, that all lines at this point are muted, meaning that regardless of kids in the background, dogs in the background, you have no worries there of any noise interrupting our webinar process. And also, I want to let you know that for our webinar, if you have any specific questions, knowing that our speaker is going to cover a variety of topics tonight, but you may have some specific concerns, and so you can bring those up in a few different ways. And Andrew, I'll go ahead and if you can flip to the next slide. There we go, perfect. So there's a couple different ways that you can ask us, the panelists, questions. The first is through the chat room, which I did post a little message to you this evening. You're welcome to make a comment or send a question to all the participants or just to the panelists using the chat function you will see on the right. The other way that you can submit questions is directly through our Q&A. If you do not see that option on the right, you can click on the bottom three dots, which are located at the lower end of the screen. And from there, you can click on those dots and see the Q&A button. Click that, and there you'll be able to post questions as well. And you can do that throughout our webinar this evening. But just know that we're going to try to leave all questions to the end of the webinar for our speaker to address at that time, unless there's something that kind of makes sense for the given topic. But those are a few different ways. That's a little commercial there for you to interject your thoughts, your comments, your questions, and make sure that we're better serving you this evening and you're getting the most of your time, right? So with that, let me introduce our guest speaker for this evening. My name is Valerie Sled, and I'm actually new to the Climate Learning and Development team. This is the second webinar that I've been able to host in our series this month. And again, just really fortunate to get to join you all as part of this team. Andrew Canuck is also our one you're going to be hearing from this evening. And he is just a fantastic dynamite speaker, really has some energy and passion for what he does in the field. And so he's really going to give you some expertise that you probably weren't even expecting for this evening. I'm fortunate to get to work with him, and I'm fortunate to get to introduce him to you tonight. So with that, Andrew, I'll go ahead and give you the reins, and you can take it over from here.
Well, thank you, Miss Valerie, and good evening, folks. Welcome from West Central Iowa. I hope where you folks are at, you've got some green grass and some sunshine. It is just a gorgeous day on tap, and I was out and about. There's quite a bit of field work happening. Had a couple calls. Some guys and gals are planting some corn and soybeans, so we're really kicking things off. And I just want to say thanks for taking time to listen and spend some time with us this evening. I know there's a lot going on. The bottom line here is we are going to talk all about application side today. And as Valerie said, send those questions in. Don't be afraid to ask. If you've got compatibility questions, we'll certainly try and answer those at the end. I just want you to be aware that some of the compatibility things, we may need to get some additional details from you and some contact follow-up, but we'll do our very best this evening to answer those compatibility questions. So without further ado, let's talk about why should we use FieldView Drive to record applications. Many folks have done a great job starting with planting. They've done harvest. And now they're saying, hey, can I do some application? The answer is yes. We've got the next step here with some opportunity to understand what's going on the farm operation based on the application side, be it fertilizer, spraying, manure, fungicide, etc. And some of the reasons that customers come back to us and say the application side is extremely valuable is, one, there's an application reporting summary, and I'll show you that coming up. Imagine having the products, the weather information, the time and the date all filled out as you're folding up the sprayer and getting ready to head to the next field. The other secondary piece is then, what about the record keeping? Can we track those inventories of products? Can we look at what did we use on those fields and use that either in landlord splits or family splits on the farm? Maybe we're trying to do a on-farm trial execution where one of the things I'll show coming up is fungicide. Folks say, hey, does fungicide pay for me or not? Well, go out and applicate it, track it in FieldView. You're going to have your own on-farm results with this tool, utilizing that application data and putting that with the planting and harvest data to have some empowerment. So let's talk about the what. What applications can FieldView Drive capture? And this can be a wide array depending on where you're from and what your production practices are. Spraying, we do herbicide, fungicide, insecticide. I don't have nematicides on there, but I know in some of the specialty markets those are used. Fertilizer-wise, we do like liquid 28%. We'll do any type of dry product, whether it's urea or AMS. It might be MAP or potash. We do anhydrous ammonia. We do planting side that we can track starter fertilizer there and start to put a little bit of that information together. We will do some lime information, and we can track manure today. If you're hauling like liquid hog manure and you've got the technology there, we could track that. The one piece I'll call out down at the bottom that's a little bit of a breakout of the fertilizer is the NH3 or the anhydrous ammonia. We have so many people that say, hey, I'd like to track those tank numbers. I'd like to try stabilizers. Can we do that? And the answer is yes. Today in FieldView, you could track your tank numbers, and you could track, for example, using NServe or Centuro, that's a stabilizer, track that application in the field, and then have your area that's untreated. So regardless of the product, if you want to track that stabilizer, you've got some opportunity. And really what boils down to in this whole sphere of the climate tool is we believe every decision matters and every pass matters. Now, with that said, as I commented earlier, a lot of folks have done a great job of capturing this planter layer and combine layer. So those pieces have come together. Now we're starting to look at the spray layer. We may want to look at the manure wagon down here. You might have your anhydrous bar up here. So as you start to pull those layers together, there's empowerment to use that data to make an additional decision and start to tweak things each year based on those choices that you can glean out of the data. As we move to this next slide, we are going to predominantly talk about machine compatibility this evening. And we're talking about that FieldView Drive in that sprayer connected to the iPad or the anhydrous bar and tractor setup, the dry spreader setup, etc. I do want you to know that if you have prior application data, so maybe last year's spray map, you want to bring in where you sprayed fungicide, for example, we have the data inbox manual upload tool, and we can take in a whole host of digital layer. And if you ever have a question on that or you need us to point out how to find that, support.climate.com is a great tool that you should know about as a user. That will walk you through the steps on how to upload that data for that specific monitor. We do have a third option down here in the lower left corner, the add manual layer. And what that really means is maybe you want to just make a record of something that you did in the Cab app. and you don't have a data inbox manual upload layer and the drive wasn't running, you can go in there and add some manual layers and put in some digital layer there. Like, let's say that you spread 10 ton of cattle manure across the field and you just want to have that as a record. You can go in and make a spatial layer there and have that in there for future use. So 2 years from now, you could reference that and say, should I be going back to apply some more manure or not? The fourth option is really something here that we'll hit on. We call it the Map Anything Kit. And that's going to be something here that maybe you don't have all the digital technology on that spreader or sprayer or Anhydrous bar, but you want to start mapping what is going on. You want to keep track of some things like maybe you make a rate change or you apply something a little bit different, like you have stabilizer on that urea there that you're spreading on the pasture versus not, and you want to do a trial. The Map Anything kits are a great tool that can get anybody mapping and starting to learn in their operation. So as we move ahead, a couple more slides here, and then we're actually going to go to the app live. I want you folks to realize that the spraying and application granular rate control systems are a little bit different than the compatibility on the planting and harvest. If you look up here, you're going to see some names that you may not have seen before. So Apache, Hagie, Miller, maybe the Rogator and Terragator. We're pretty familiar with John Deere, Case IH, New Holland. And what that really means is the application side is pretty diverse in terms of the rate control systems we support. So there's Ag Leader Direct Command that we support on the application side. There is Raven. So a lot of the retail fleet runs Raven technology there from a retailer standpoint or dealer standpoint. A lot of those are supported today. Trimble Field IQ is one that has come on board and has been a popular option, especially as you look at some of the Case IH stuff. So Case IH, John Deere, we know those already, and those are supported. When you come over here to the right side, this is the granular, so the dry products. We've got Raven, John Deere, and Ag Leader. So keep that in mind that this isn't quite the same as planting and harvest. We have some more brand opportunity and differentiation, which is really a good thing for you as the farmer and the dealer. One comment I'll make before I move on, down at the bottom center, we have a new addition. It's the Surefire Ag Sentinel application system that is on planters for starter. We just released this about 2 weeks ago and are excited to add some more opportunity and compatibility. So if you have one of those systems, that might be of option and interest to hook that up as you're working through that planter setup this spring. I'm going to talk through very quickly here what are some of the different setups and how does it look in terms of making a compatibility assessment, and then we're going to jump into the Cab app here live. So spraying side, this could be a self-propelled or a pull-type sprayer. What we want to know to hook that FieldView Drive up to that equipment and then pair to the Cab app is, what is our monitor? So is that monitor compatible? Do we have a compatible GPS? And is there a rate controller? So think about it this way, that touchscreen display in that sprayer cab has to be reading the flow meter, controlling the rate, and likely doing the section control. So as we move to the right, we're always going to check that compatibility guide. Support.climate.com is the place to do that. We'll look to confirm that and then move into setting up the equipment down here. So you'll see a screenshot that's got the pull-type sprayer and the self-propelled sprayer right there. We'll set that equipment up. You set it up one time. At that, we'll install that drive, make that pairing connection, and then we go to work based on our application product tank mixes, and we go spray. So this is one option here that you have everything digital and the tools are ready to go. You can plug that drive in and have those layers out from the as-applied standpoint. Now, the second option on sprayers, we may have a self-propelled or a pull-type sprayer that doesn't have a digital rate controller today. And the question is, can I map that? Should I map it? Well, the reality of it is yes, you have the ability to map this. And what you need to think about today is when I set this up, if I've got GPS, that gives me the ability to pair that drive and be able to see where I'm at. We can use the selection of an incompatible display and rate controller and do what I call coverage mapping. So it's going to tell you where you've been. You'll have to enter your products and you'll have to enter your rate and then tell it to start mapping. I have a lot of customers here in Southwest Iowa that have used this based on, they may have a rate controller right here that is at least doing the control, but they don't have a way to map, and they're using that to spray pastures, for example. I've got some folks that use it just in the pull-type sprayer scenario where they're doing fungicide, and they want to understand where did I applicate fungicide versus not. So this is really a wide open space here that you can utilize this information on the incompatible rate controller setup for spraying. Fertilizer, in terms of the dry application, this is pretty new to us, and this is exciting. So now I can start to take my dry nutrients and start to put this to work. And again, it comes back to what is my compatible monitor or display, my GPS, and a rate controller. And the thing that I put in here is, in this example, this would be a John Deere setup. Can the display execute that prescription, and do we control that rate from that display? That's a really good indicator if you've got some compatibility, and then of course check that compatibility guide. So with that said, self-propelled or pull type, doesn't matter. Whichever one you have, if you've got the technology on there, you can start to map those granular applications. We get into some scenarios here where somebody is pulling a ground drive card or something that doesn't have a compatible rate controller. So an example, some folks will go out and spread their pasture, for example, and maybe that cart that they've rented from the retailer doesn't have the technology. You could still go out with the incompatible rate controller and display option. If the tractor's got GPS, you could still map this and get that coverage map and get that information pulled together. The anhydrous side, a lot of anhydrous going on today. And this is something that a lot of folks have said, hey, I'd like to do this. So one thing that you need to keep in mind about the anhydrous is a lot of times the anhydrous bar may not be the same brand as the rate controller, which is okay. But ultimately, if you've got the technology on there, so John Deere, Case IH, Raven, Trimble, you can see those over here, and that gives me the ability to set that information up and map. And that is a feature set that's come on here really in the last year that's continued to grow, and it's pretty valuable as you start to hone in those nitrogen rates. So what happens if you're renting that anhydrous bar from a place that has the Raven 440, but it doesn't have that digital touch screen, or you haven't had that chance to do that? Maybe the tractor has auto steer. You still have the opportunity to come in and record those rates and make those maps come to life for you. So this could be the scenario where you have a tank that you ran at 150 pounds of N, and then you decide to run a tank at 180. You could absolutely do that in FieldView today and get value out of that to see, did that higher rate of nitrogen pay off, or did the lower rate of nitrogen pay off in your operation? So I'll hit on this as kind of the final piece, and then we'll jump into the app. When we go to the anhydrous side, we can enter those stabilizers. So I've got NServe as an example, and this isn't an infomercial for them. It's just commonly used. You could add in something else, such as Centuro or Nutrisphere, whatever you're using. And this gives you the ability to track it. On the left side on the right side, this is the application summary I'm going to show you in just a little bit. This is the application totals by the field, so total pounds of product applied, what was your average rate, your speed, your acres. Up here would be the time stamp of when you did it, and then your client farm field information. And then down here, you would have the ability to look at the splits. So they've got anhydrous ammonia versus a hydrous ammonia with N-serve. And then we've got the operator and license number along with that weather information. So some really slick information to have as you may consider putting this in your cab. So as we talk about managing applications in FieldView, and I'm going to show this live, I want you to understand that when you manage these maps, you want to think of that application name right here called corn pre-emergence, just like it's the operation of planting corn. And beneath that corn pre-emergence application name, you can change these products. So you can add, edit products right here and change these and keep that map the same. So what I'm saying is, let's say that for some reason you ran out of Roundup Original Max and you needed to add in Power Max. If I edit the products and add Power Max, we will show the first application in blue and then the second application in orange, both on the same map. And that's what's really recommended, especially if you're doing trials like nutrients or you're doing a specific product like fungicide. Edit that product information down here, not edit the application name. And with that said, you may have some reasons why you want to edit the application name and have a separate layer. That's totally plausible. But in a lot of instances, folks want to see a head-to-head map to be able to make those comparisons. And this is just showing here how to edit those products. You go in and you remove the product and then add in your new one. So I am going to slide over here to the Cab app here, and we're going to take a little bit of look. This is the Cab app that we run in the floater, run in the sprayer, run in the anhydrous bar tractor, etc. And so just kind of giving you a brief look at this, when we get set up and prepared, we're going to go to the equipment menu right here and set the information up based on the sprayer. It might be the pull type spreader. It might be the anhydrous bar. And I'm not going to go through the setup today. It's pretty straightforward. I do have some things here I do want to show you as far as prep work. When we look at the settings over here, so in the bottom left, the two gears and settings, I highly recommend that you come down here to your applications and you go in here and add your applications before you go to the field. And the reason why is a lot of times you've already got those products decided, you've got the rates decided. The beautiful part is if you take 20 minutes to enter these products and the rates, that makes the data collection that much easier and smoother as you go through the startup and get things going this spring. If you want to add a new application, it's pretty simple. You come down here and hit Add to Application. And I could say, for example, say fungicide 2020. And then I have to say what type of application, so it's liquid. And then the one thing I will call out here, if you are doing a flat rate application, so a flat rate, I'm not changing that rate, you will enter your base rate right here. So I'll do this for you. I'll say it's 10 gallon. And you'll notice over here that my slider is on rate. So I want to leave it there if I'm doing flat rate. Now, if I'm doing variable rate, I recommend that you do it by the amount, because that variable rate prescription, if I'm doing fertilizer, the data and product information will come out correct. So let's go back to rate, and I'll just add in a product, and let me say it's Delaro, for example. The one thing I comment when you type in products, type them in fully, and you'll always come up with the product name and the EPA number. If you can't find it, enter it as a custom product, and we always do an update every quarter. So if you find something that's not in there, send an email to support@climate.com, and we'll make adjustments to it. I have to enter in my rate, so 8 gallons be really spendy. We need to have 8 ounces per acre. And then maybe I've got a adjuvant. Let's see here. I've got an adjuvant there to help with the deposition, getting it on the leaf. I've just added my product application, folks. So you can do that ahead of time. I highly encourage you do that there before you head to the field. So I'm going to go to my home, and I'm going to go to my map page here. And you'll see that I've got my application spray layer right here. And I'm going to point out a couple things to you folks. So I am on the drop-down menu here for fungicide. And I should back up. I had my field here, the test 2, and it's 2020. And then I came to my layers menu. And application falls under the in-season. So we're thinking about some in-season practices. It doesn't go to planting. It doesn't go to base layer. It's right under the in-season. When I tap that fungicide layer, I can look at what was the rate map. I can look at sprayer speed. And I can also look at the different product rates. What I want to point out to you is this product mix map. Remember I said if I was running a trial, so I had 3 different trial products out here, and you can see orange right here. You can see blue right here. And I can see green right here. So you'll see I have 3 different products. And if I go over here to the right, and I look at my table right here, this will show me the Delaro right up here. And based on the rates and the product, it'll show me then the Triva Pro, which would be the blue, and it would show me the headline amp, which is the green. So I now have just laid out an on-farm trial, and that shows me every product head-to-head. Now, if you did not want the application map to have that continuity, you could come up here to this fungicide 2019. And if you wanted a separate map, you could edit that name. And I could change this to 2020, I would say .1, oh, .2. There we go. Now, when I go back to map and confirm that, you'll see that my map disappeared, and I'm going to start a new map, okay? So as I kind of close this out, I do want to point something out here on the edit side. There we go. I'm going to edit right down here on my telemetry panes. Take a look through these telemetry panes. There's a lot of information that could be valuable for you, like the direction and wind speed. It might be the temperature and humidity. It could be that you want to look at GPS speed, for example. When I press and hold on these, you'll see that they slide over. I do recommend that you have a drop pin map there. That'll drop a pin as you're spraying. So you'll see it drops a field pin there. Maybe I saw a rock and I need to pick that up. I can type that rock in and keep that application moving. And then I'll actually switch over here to the Anhydrous side for you in just a second, show you this custom map. The custom map is how I track tank wagons, or I could track something with the sprayer. So as I finish up, I come over here to my menu layer. This is one of the really slick things that happens pulling this data together, the application summary. That is the field totals and information that I've just applicated. And it should have my information all put together here. The one comment on the operator and license number, you'd have to go in and enter that information. If you tap it, you can enter the operator name and the license number, and those pieces will fill in. So one of the other pieces right here is you've got the weather data. This is pretty awesome. So as you pull in to start the field, we'll take a snapshot. If you've got cellular data on that iPad, we'll take a snapshot of the temperature right here, the wind speed, pretty windy to be spraying, and the direction. And then when we finish out this field, you'll get those same parameters. And you'll see right here, it says conditions not automatically pre-filled due to no internet connection at the end of the time. If I have a handheld meter that measures wind speed for me, I can make those adjustments as I see fit. So maybe the wind wasn't quite as brisk and it was 15 mile an hour and it was out of the south. I can make those adjustments as the applicator and update that. When I'm done, I've got the Create Map PDF. So if you want a printed report, there's your information all right there. Keep in mind, I'm running a demo drive, folks, so that's why you don't see a pictorial map, but you should see that in a real live application. And these would be my parameters on here that you just saw. I can email or print that. If I go to the home page and I go to analysis, I won't go through this today, but you can see a lot of reports and filters there. If you want to pull something out of that and use it for inventory, that's a really great tool that can help you dig through that information. It rolls it up. You can look at a product or an application name, and it really empowers you to use that data in your inventory management. I'm going to switch over to the Anhydrous bar, folks, just real quick. I'm pretty passionate that this anhydrous ammonia thing can really be made simpler. And you'll see my little tractors running right here. If I come over to this custom map, so I'm going to press that and I'm going to say my custom map layer name is tank number tracking. Okay. I'm going to hit done, and then it's going to pop up and it's going to say, hey, tell me about a zone. So think about it this way. We're creating a spatial layer that's all about the tank numbers from what tanks did I get and match them up to scale tickets. Then the zone name is going to be the tank name. So for example, the tank might be P22. I hit done. And that's, well, let's try it again, folks. Hit the wrong button. There we go. Try it done one more time. Not one to take for me here for some reason, but I'll show you here what the actual outcome is. When I go to the custom layer, you'll see that we've got the ability to track. Right here, it's actually labeled 232. They typed in the name as 232 instead of tanks. When I slide to the next option here, you'll see that they had a couple different tanks, and it tracks it by the amounts and the acres, etc. So just be aware of that. That could be helpful as you're trying to match up inventory to scale tickets, or maybe for some reason you like a certain tank and you want to see how many times you had it, or maybe that tank has got the end serve and you just wanted to make sure it was applicated on the farm. I'm going to pause here a second and just come back to you, Valerie. Do we have any questions coming in so far from anybody?
Sure do, Andrew. The first one that I'll go ahead and give you, and this may help you segue into other topics that you'd like to cover, but so can we map multiple applications in a field? Last time that the individual imported data, it mixed the maps together and erased the first one.
So when they're saying multiple applications, are we talking about like two products applied at the same time? Or would this be like I spray burn down chemistry and then I come back and spray post chemistry in the field? So I've got two different times of application, but it's with the same sprayer. Can you clarify, whoever's asking that question, please?
Yes, that person clarified separate product, 2 different days.
Separate product, 2 different days right now is still showing itself separately at this time because it's a different time stamp. Take a note on that, Val, and we'll pass that along to the Cab app team to see if they can make some adjustments there for us.
Will do. And I've just heard from one of our panelists, Mindy. She just wrote that down as well to pass back. So thank you so much for bringing that question up from our participants.
And if the participant is here, you'll see that I believe this is what you're talking about. I sprayed some chemistry on the 29th of June and then got rained out to the 11th. It was still the same chemistry package, but it showed 2 different layers. And if the guy or gal asking that question could confirm that with Valerie, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thank you, Andrew. So here's another question that we've got in here this evening. What happens when I have an older pull type sprayer? Can I get a map layer into FieldView?
So the question at hand is, can I map that? And the opportunity comes down to the attendee asking this question: do you have some GPS on that tractor? If you've got GPS on that tractor, we could start to map that information, or you could purchase a Map Anything kit to start mapping that across the field. And that's really something there. If you want some more one-on-one consultation, please pass your information over to us. The answer is yes, technically you can map that. We just need to know what is your equipment so we can get you down the right path to make that happen for you.
Thanks, Andrew. Folks, feel free to bring in your specific questions here. Anything, again, technical and specific to your operation. Here's another question, Andrew. If I rent an Anhydrous applicator from a retailer, what is the best way to get that map layer into FieldView?
So as you're renting from that retailer, let's switch back to this slide deck real quick. I need to know, in this instance, would your application toolbar be like this first option that connects to the smart display in your tractor that may be running auto steer or may not be? Or is it like a Raven 440 here where you've got this digital controller, but it does not map today? And so trying to answer this question is, if you've got that retailer that's got the smart setup that could connect the FieldView Drive, I'd encourage you to connect the FieldView Drive to your equipment today and capture that as applied layer as you're going through the field live. If you don't have that option, and the secondary option is the Raven 440, if your tractor has GPS, hook in that drive and make this incompatible rate controller setup so you can coverage map. And if you don't have GPS, then your other option with us today is create that manual layer. So as you're thinking about that for the question, if you know specifically which option you may have here, fire that off to Val, and I'd be glad to steer you further down the path.
Here's another question for you, Andrew. What is the advantage or disadvantage to having the application the same and changing products versus just having the application preloaded and having everything already there? I understand the map is going to be cut up with different applications, but is that necessarily a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing. It's user preference, and it's all about what you're wanting to solve. So as you're looking at that single layer map, your ability for you to be able to cut that data or look at it side by side is probably the biggest reason. If you want to have a secondary layer here like this, where on the left side you'll see that I've got Callisto, Power Max, and Pulse, and then I've got a secondary layer that is Callisto Power Max. There is nothing wrong with that at all, folks. It's really a personal preference, but a lot of times the calls that we field is folks really want this first option of, I want my full continuity of layer there so I can see everything and my acres, my information come out correctly. And oh, by the way, I decide I want to run a trial and I want to see those products head to head on that layer versus having to switch to multiple layers.
Nice job, Andrew. Here's another fun question for you coming from our participants. In order for FieldView to enter the weather information automatically at application start and stop, do you need a network data plan, or will this weather info be entered once you get to the shop and connect to Wi-Fi and sync to the cloud? Or is this entered manually if no network data is available?
It's a great question. At the end of the day, you're going to need some cellular service if you would like to have this application summary with the weather information filled out on an automated time frame. And if you recall, when I showed this earlier, it will show up a little commentary. If you don't have active internet down here, it will not fill that information in. So the guys and gals that run an iPad without cellular, that's totally fine. The thing that you need to be aware of is you will have to go back in and manually enter that start and stop data for that weather information.
And Andrew, I'll just give the brief commercial here too. Our Knowledge Center is a valuable resource, certainly for all seasons. So if there's any technical questions, that search bar, you can type in keywords and find what you're looking for in a PDF, in a video, in a web page. There's a variety of resources there. So here's one question from another participant in the chat. I have a John Deere self-propelled dry fertilizer spreader with a new liter box. In the past, I've had trouble getting the rate in FieldView to match what is on the 2630 monitor. What are some things that I can do to troubleshoot this?
So the bottom line here on this setup is, are you running variable rate or are you running flat rate? And one of the things that I will go to on the Cab app is under the settings and then the application over here, and I can go to granular. So when I add that application, let's just say this is corn fertilizer. This will be a granular application here. So just a second here, I'm getting this put together. And the one thing here is if you're doing flat rate, your rate there, you need to make certain that when you're putting this tank mix, or excuse me, this granular blend mix together, that if it's flat rate, I'm changing this product here to match up, because this is not something that the rate controller will send over the products. It just knows basically how many pounds are being applied. And if I'm over here doing variable rate, I actually want to do that by weight option. That is supposed to be the way to help you try and get that information to come out together based on the variable rate application. So that would be my suggestion, to review that and see if we can get those dialed in.
Thank you, Andrew. So here's another weather question. Do you need to have a weather station to record weather during applications, or does it draw from local weather?
So great question. We do not have to have a weather station. we draw from local weather. And when we do that here, we use local weather and triangulate it down to the field, aka position, and then we true it up as we have radar weather and some purchase services. The bottom line is that weather is going to be pretty darn accurate for those fields. No weather station is required.
Thank you, Andrew. Folks, I'm going to let you know again, we can entertain any and all specific questions here. We've still got about 12 minutes left of our scheduled webinar. And we'll give you just a second to post any more questions. But Andrew, you've really done a phenomenal job this evening covering our applications and how we can manage them, of course, through our FieldView platform. Andrew, do you have any more slides that you wanted to cover?
I'll maybe just wind this down on a couple things here. Folks will ask me from time to time, are our application summaries fully dicamba compliant? There are a couple things that I'll point out. If you look over here, anything in green, we collect that information. Anything that I've got over here that says enter in notes. So for example, like when did you complete your training? What are the type of nozzles that you're using? The equipment clean out procedure, when did you do that? What is the buffer distance and what are the susceptible crops? Those can be entered in the notes today and make this to where you would have the records there to have the dicamba application filled out completely. So I'm showing this as the application summary right here, and the information that you've entered there could make that dicamba recording a little bit simpler and easier for you. And then I'll come back to this, the analysis in that Cab app. This we didn't spend a lot of time on. I mentioned it, but it is pretty darn powerful for what you can analyze and what you can look through today for reports, for field totals, for the ability to do maybe a billing split with a landlord or with a farm manager. So just keep that in mind. With that, I would just say, at least from my perspective, I know things are a little bit rough out there, but hope everybody has a great spring. This is a photo actually off one of my family's farms, and why I share this tree actually took a direct hit with a tornado in 2013 and is still standing strong and tall. So I think we've got deep roots in ag, and we're going to get all through this. And the bottom line is, I hope that as you've spent some time with us this evening, that this has been valuable to help you see some different ways to use this information. It's certainly not all the ways, but I can guarantee if you're passionate about starting to learn some other things in your operation, or you're a dealer helping somebody in their operation, there's a whole host of ways that you can use this application data to get better and make some easier decisions in your operation. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your business. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Valerie.
Thank you, Andrew. And not to steal anything from that wonderful conclusion to this webinar. But again, if you have any concerns or questions, we certainly have our support line that you can call in at 888-924-7475. Our Knowledge Center is at support.climate.com, and that's another resource for you as well. You'll be receiving after this webinar in the next day or so a link to complete a survey. And so if you have any feedback for us at all regarding the webinar, the content, the delivery, so on and so forth, please provide that, because we'd love to tweak these in the future so that we're better addressing your needs. But we thank you so much for spending your evening with us, and we look forward to hearing your stories from the field, how you have a successful planning this season. So we wish you all the best. Thank you, and have a good evening.